Do you want to know how to create custom doors in Archicad without having to resort to GDL scripting? G'day, Bruce here, Barking Dog Bim, and I teach people how to get the most out of Archicad to make it work for you. So if this is something you want to know how to do, how to create custom doors without having to resort to GDL scripting, then hang around and I'll show you. I've set up a simple model here, a wall and a out-of-the-box Graphisoft door, just door 27. And I've set up the geometry of a somewhat adventurous door lying face down on the ground. Now there's two methods by which you can create custom doors. One is using the save as method, and the other is using the create from floor plan method. And I'll just go over the differences between them so that you can decide for yourself which method would best suit your situation. The save as method, you model your door using native Archicad elements. So I've used a wall, series of walls for the leaf and the glazing bars. I've used a slab for the glazing itself, a morph for the door frame, and a column for the overhead indicator light. Now there's no need for these to be modeled on the X and Y origin, but you do need to model them on the Z0. So if I change this to Project 0, this bottom face here is at the Z0 point. And that's important because that will be the outside face of your wall. Orientation is aligned with the X and Y axis, so this is the bottom of my door clearly. X positive in this direction, Y positive in that direction. Then we select all of our geometry and we go File, Libraries and Objects, Save Selection as Door. Now if you've got your Edit GDL Library Parts toolbar turned on, which is this toolbar here, and you can click on the down arrow next to the save icon and choose door. Now I'll just save it to my embedded library. You should save it to an external location for data safety, and I'll just call it new door 1. Very inventive. Click on save. Then I get presented with this dialog in which I have the opportunity to rename my parameters and change their values. Now if you've set all of your attributes to what you want, you won't need to change any of these, and it's actually quite difficult to figure out what's what. But in this case, I know that this building material is my frame building material. This is my glass building material. I'll just leave those two as that for now. Just doing that to demonstrate something later on. I also have the opportunity to change my details. So set my author, my license type, and other elements in here, as well as my preview picture, which you choose from a file selection dialog. So just navigate to your preview picture, which you may have taken as a screenshot, and okay, there's my preview picture. Change and okay. Now when I choose my door tool, my new door 1 is pre-selected, ready to go, and I'll just place it as I would any other door, and that's it. It's done, it's placed. So if I look at my 3D, there's my door. You can see it's cut a hole in the wall. I will talk about that hole later, and it's a door type. That's the fundamentals of the save as method. Next, we've got the create from floor plan method. And in this scenario, for this method, you do need to orient your door correctly or locate your door correctly around the origin point. So this dark X here is my 0, point. If you're unsure, you just hover over it and read your coordinates in your coordinate palette. If you don't have this on your screen, then it's under Window, Palettes, Coordinates, and it's this palette here. And what you need to do is create a new object. So we go File, Libraries and Objects, New Object. I can also on my toolbar click this button here, New Object. Restore down. I set the subtype to Model Element Opening, Wall Opening, door in brackets wall. Set that. I can fill out the rest of my attributes. So author, license, description, and keywords. Keywords is your searchable terms when you're searching your object dialog. I can set my preview picture as before by clicking on this button here, and I paste from the clipboard. So instead of choosing from a file dialog, this is pasting from the clipboard. And then we go to our 3D script, and with our elements selected in the floor plan, we click on this button here, which is generate your 3D script based on the floor plan selection. Click on that. It populates my 3D script, translates that geometry into GDL, and then I save my object. So I'll call this one new door 2. Very exciting. Save. And once again, place my door, new door 2. It's selected because I've just created it. And place it using my standard placement techniques. Have a look in 3D. And there is my door geometry. Same geometry. You will notice that the holes look like they do, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So that's the technique for Archicad 27. You click on this button here. In Archicad 26 and earlier, so this is Archicad 26, we'll start our new object, restore down, go to my 3D script window. Now the trick here is that your ground floor plan, or your floor plan, needs to be restored down as well, or undocked. So on a PC, restore down your plan view. On a Mac, it's right click on the tab and choose undock. So what I have is my 2 undocked windows. I'll select everything I want in my floor plan, click and drag, but when you first do it, it will be on the insert new node in your pet palette. You want to change that to drag, but then I can't drag into this window, so I hit escape and go again. Click, hold, it's on drag it into this window. There's a marquee symbol around my cursor, which means it's working. If you don't get that, just wriggle your cursor a bit and it should appear. Then I let go of my mouse and it does the same thing. Gets all of that geometry translated into GDL. So that's how you do it in Archicad 26 and earlier. But in Archicad 27, it's a lot simpler. You just click on that button there. And you don't need to have your plan restored down or undocked. So that's the fundamentals of the 2 different methods. Now let's have a talk about the problems. With the save as method, so that was this door on the right here, the plan view doesn't look that great. This is a symbolic view, which is just a pure projection of the 3D geometry. No fills, background or cut fills. Doesn't look that great. And I don't have my leaf shown in the open position, and I don't have my door art showing. You can get the fills to display by changing your floor plan and section view from symbolic to either projected or projected with overhead. And what that will do is that will cut through the door at your view plan height. And this is Archicad cutting your object and viewing. This is not happening inside the object. This is happening with Archicad post-processing your door. But we've still got things that are falling short of our drafting conventions. No open leaf, no door swing. Now to fix this, you need to draft the floor plan display how you want. The quickest way to do this is to select your door, explode it, but keep the original, which is under Edit, Reshape, Explode. I've set up a shortcut key. You may or may not have a shortcut key associated with it. We want to keep the original elements. And what that does is that gives us the 2D version of our door. And so we can just do some quick tidy up on that. So I've just drafted this with fills and an arc, and I've put hotspots. So hotspot here, where I want selection hotspots. And if I select my door now and open it, I can do that with File, Libraries and Objects, Open Object. I can use the shortcut, or I can use this button here on my toolbar. I restore it down, and I want my 2D symbol view here. And when you have a door or a window type, you've got a representation of what the wall is. And so I just copy and paste. Copy that to the clipboard with Control or Command C. Come to my... I'll just separate these two so it's a little bit easier to navigate. Come to my 2D symbol view and paste in place. Now I can only snap to that origin, so I'll snap center to center. There we go. And there's the symbol that will appear. So I'll save that. Have a look, nothing's happened. And there's two reasons for that. One is if I go to my door object, have a look at my 2D script. I've got some 2D script in here. Just some simple stuff that will transform, project it, and then delete again. Very simple script. So I'll just comment that out. Save again. So if there's any 2D script, the 2D symbol won't appear. What will happen is the 2D view will appear instead. 2D symbol is a drafted view. 2D view is what happens with your scripted view. It's an important difference there. Still nothing's happened. What I need to do is change this back from projected, which is an Archicad generated view, or an Archicad environment generated view, to symbolic, which is an object generated view. And what that has done is that's replaced the scripted view with my drafted view. And I've got my hotspot here for selection, which represents that hotspot there, and a hotspot there, which is that one there. And you've got your 4 default ones that Archicad generates for you at the 4 corners of the opening. With the create from floor plan view, I've got nothing here. I've got a blank opening, no representation at all. Now, as per the other one, I can change this to projected. Again, I will talk about this opening later on, but that gives me the same results as with my other door. But to properly generate that, let's just change that back to symbolic. To generate that how I want, again, I've drafted my 2D representation. I'll just turn off the 3D stuff. This is oriented around the project origin with the external face of the wall on this line here. So make sure that you've positioned your door in the negative Y space. Select everything, come to my 2D script and click on this button here. And that will translate that 2D stuff into a 2D GDL. Save. And there is my view. You can see I should probably tidy this up in 2D a bit. And I'll show you how to update a bit later on. With these methods, this is a fixed 2D representation. I can select on it, but I can't alter things on it. For example, the opening angle, it's not parametric, it's just a fixed representation. Right, the wall hole opening. As you would have noticed right at the start, the holes cut in the wall for these doors don't match either the shape or the dimensions of my door. Talk about the save as method first. Here's my door geometry that I used to create the door. If I have a look at that in 3D, what you need to do to create your wall opening is create a slab that represents how you want the wall to be cut. So in this instance, even though strictly speaking it wouldn't be how it would actually be done, but for demonstration purposes, we want to cut our wall opening like this. I've created a slab for the cut. I align the bottom of my slab with my Z0, which will represent the external face of the wall. The thickness is irrelevant, and I give it an element ID of Wallhole. One word, Wallhole. Doesn't have to be capitalized. So that's your element ID down here, Wallhole. And so then you save that along with your geometry. Now your Wallhole must be a slab. The help says it can also be a roof, but I've not had any luck with that, so use a slab. To get this into the object, we got to save as again. So before I do that, just remind you what we did here. We set a preview picture. We renamed some parameters. So now that I've put my Wallhole into my geometry, I'll select all of my geometry and I'll save as door. And what this does, new door 1, save, it replaces that object. So when I click on replace, all of my changes have been wiped, reset to what that geometry is in my floor plan. My preview picture has gone. So this is a downside of this method, that every time you need to make a change, you got to save as over the top of your old object. And any customization you've done gets wiped. So I'll save that again, and you can see that my 2D representation has been reset as well. So that's post-processing that I have to do every time I make a change. But if I now have a look at my 3D, my wall hole is cut correctly. So I've made this an excessively thick wall so you can see the impact of my wall hole cut. Hasn't smoothed out my curves, but at least it's the right shape. And typically your door is going to fit within the thickness of your wall anyway, so that's generally not an issue. With the create from floor plan method, there's my wall hole slab. It needs to be oriented with your door, of course, around the origin with the element ID of wall hole. I navigate to my object, the 3D script, and this differs to the save as method is that I'm not overriding the object, I'm just replacing my 3D script. So I select the entire 3D script using Control A or Command A, delete, select my floor plan geometry, which includes my wall hole slab, and click on my generate button. Save, and again, I'm not overwriting my object with a new object, I'm just overriding it with changes I've already made, so the base definition of my object doesn't change. So I've maintained my 2D view. The 2D wall hole doesn't work, but if I look at my 3D, my 3D wall hole is there. Now a variation on this is if you don't want a hole cut through the entire wall, if you just want a niche cut, you change this element ID from wall hole to wall niche, and then it will cut the thickness of your slab through the wall. I'll also just change the thickness so that we can get an idea of what it actually does. Go back to my 3D script, delete it, select everything that I want on my floor plan, generate my 3D script. If I have a look at my 3D now, there's my wall niche, only cutting as far as the slab is thick. So that's an alternative on that. I'll just return that to what it was. And there we have it. So we've got our 3D geometry sorted. We've got our wall hole sorted. We've got our 2D representation worked out. And we know how to fix up the save as one. I won't do it again because I've got more to show you. What about surfaces? With the save as object, you get a bunch of parameters that are created with it. And these will have an effect to some extent. So for example, building material, for us to change it from aluminium to say a timber, that changes. There is some impact there, but those are the surfaces associated with the building material itself. That's not a surface override. And if we have a look at the surface parameters that were created, I've got 3 here, and they don't have any impact at all. So if I change these, they don't have any impact on the final outcome. And why is that? And the reason is that a surface parameter should only be created if your surface is overridden in your base geometry. Now in all of my base geometry, I don't have any of my surfaces overridden. but for some reason, it's created these three surfaces. Now I know a column will create a surface, which is this PLC white. I don't know why these other two have been created. I haven't been able to track it down. But what you do is in your base geometry, you override the surfaces, like so. This one is a metal silver anodized. For my frame, I'll override it as well. But instead of making it a silver anodized, I'll make it a grey anodized. And the reason for that is if I make it the same surface, it won't create an extra parameter that I can control. And the glass blue. And I will override this one. So let's run through the process again of saving as a door. And I've got my surfaces created there. My silver anodized, my glass, my red, and my grey anodized. We do have an additional surface here, and that is because it will just create parameters for anything that Archicad deems is a separate surface in any of the geometry you've saved to your object. Have a look at my door. Now, because I've created new parameters, it's gone a bit funny with the surfaces, so I just reset to default. And now I have control over these surfaces independent to the building material. Like so. Now with the create from floor plan method, all the attributes are locked. So I'll go through the same process, override. So all of my surfaces are overridden in my geometry. Come back to my object, delete the 3D script, select on my floor plan, and generate my script. Save. Now with the create from floor plan method, all of the attributes are locked. I have no control over them. Now I can override them, so I can override some symbol and cut surfaces attributes, but I have no control over the independent attributes the way I do in the save as method. Now you may have seen all of these parameters, but these are just created as part of the object's subtype. And because I'm not actually doing anything with them in a script, they have no impact. So if I change the surfaces, you know, they don't actually do anything because they're not connected to anything. So if I have a look in my object under parameters, these are the parameters that just come with the door wall subtype. And I can choose to hide these if I want, just to clean up my interface. So they're all gone now. Now as they come with the subtype, see how they're blue? That means they're locked, so I can't delete them or change them. I can only hide them. I'll just reset this one to default. Right. Something else you may have noticed is our doors do not have opening lines in 3D. The Graphisoft door does. Ours do not. Now the only way to get these into your model without resorting to scripting is to use morph lines. So these Graphisoft dashes are 80 mils long and a 50 mil gap. So I'll just put in a polyline guideline indicating my opening. Now in Australia we have the ends to the hinges and the arrow to the handle. Different countries have different conventions. Now even though this is just a 2D line, I'll set my attributes so that they don't create additional parameters in my object. Draw a line 80 mils long. And then I'll copy it. And tidy it up. Group, mirror, get rid of my polyline, have a look in 3D. And there's my dashed lines. So that's the outside. I'll regroup them as one object. Copy them up to the top. Now I've got my dashed lines. And you guessed it, the process is the same. Make sure I've got all of my 3D componentry, including my Wallhole. Save as my door. Okay, have a look at the final placement. And I've got my dashed lines. Excellent. It's a bit clumsy, but that's how you got to do it. And it's the same methodology for the create from floor plan. So I've got my morph lines here. Delete my 3D script. Select all my geometry. Generate my script. There we go. Now you may have noticed that these lines are using the correct pen and these are not. The way you deal with that, reset to default. There we go. It's using the pen that I want it to. Now just say there are numerous doors of this type placed throughout the project, but the catch is they are different sizes, and that often happens, right? Same basic geometry, slightly different overall dimensions. With the save as method, so this door here, you can change the overall dimensions of your door and it will update to suit. So let's say it's 1 meter wide, for example. However, you notice that the geometry will distort. It's no longer a true curve, it's all a bit squished. This may be a problem, it may not, but that's a behavior of this save as method. With the create from floor plan method, you can't alter the geometry at all. So if I was to change this, my hotspots here, you notice that they changed. No change to my geometry. You can't change it, it's fixed. So you can change these overall sizes, but it won't have any impact on the door itself. That's why these hotspots, these automatically generated hotspots, don't match my door geometry. Now the repercussions of this is that you can inadvertently schedule the incorrect sizes of the door. And now that's a problem. So if you've got a schedule with a list of dimensions for your doors and they don't actually match your door geometry, you've got a problem. Now you can prevent this with some lines of code in your parameter or master script, but the whole idea is that we avoid scripting altogether. If you want to learn more about how parameters get executed, have a look at video 3. I'll link it up here and in the description. So the save as method will distort the geometry, but will schedule the correct sizes. The create from floor plan method will show the correct geometry, but potentially schedule the incorrect sizes. Neither method of creating these doors will respond to the model view options, the MVOs, in either plan or 3D. So if I have a look at my plan and go to my model view options, under detail level of door and window, you can see that my floor plans have a full open leaf. And if I change this to my site setout plan, it has a low detailed option. Keep an eye on this door here off to the right. That's the Graphisoft door. So that's changed its detail level. No change here. Same if I go to my 3D and change from floor plans to site setout plan. Keep an eye on this Graphisoft door. So its detail level has responded to my MVO settings, which under here, 3D and section elevation, I've changed it to schematic. Same with my opening lines under miscellaneous settings. If I change my opening lines in 3D from dashed to solid, again, keep your eye on this door. It changes to a solid line. These have remained. Further, if I turn them off completely, gone on this door, no change here. And in 2D, you can also change the swing line type. So instead of curved, if I make it straight, this responds, this doesn't. Now, granted, that's unlikely to change throughout the project. So if you've got a convention of doing it one way, it's likely going to stay that way for the duration. And the other thing you have is minimal space lines. So when I turn them on, they'll show on the doors that are scripted to show them, but the ones that you have saved using the save as or create from floor plan method, they of course don't have them. So these minimal space lines are attached to the door. They respond to its size. You don't get that with these save as methods. Now there are some additional parameters that get created with these methods, and you might wonder what they're for. With the save as method, we get this use stored environment. Now that doesn't do anything practical. You can completely ignore that one. I'll show you later actually what it does, but for practical purposes, it doesn't do anything. With the create from floor plan method, you get these wall contours, hole has wall side surface, and hole's surface split is curved in curved walls. To address the first one, we can see here that this wall doesn't have any contours closing off this opening, and I've left this opening incorrect so that you'll remember that that's a shortcoming. But if I have a look at these parameters, wall contours, 0 is none, 1 is full, 2 is side, 3 is length. So if I put in 1 for full, I get these wall contours closing off my walls. If I put in side only, doesn't seem to be any change. And if I put in 3 length, so full is side and length, so if I put in just length, side ones disappear and I don't get any length ones. Why don't I get any length ones? It's because you actually need a sill underneath your door for it to show. So if I was to raise this 100mm, so there's actually some wall coming underneath my door. Now I get my sill lines, my length lines. So that's what that parameter does. The next parameter of hole has walls side surface. This surface here is the side surface. This is the inside face. And we can see that the wall hole has inherited the edge surface. So if I activate that parameter, hole has walls side surface, I get nothing, no change. And the reason for that is it only works if you haven't used a wall hole slab. So let's come back to here, select all my geometry, deselect my wall hole slab, and repeat the process of generating my script. Has no wall hole, so my wall hole won't be right. So that's inherited this side surface of my wall. If I turn it off, it goes to a different one altogether. Where does that come from? That comes from my edge surface, which even though it's inactive, it will use this surface as the cut surface. The edge surface is inherited from the building material. So let's turn that back on. And if I was to flip this wall in place, you can see that it's still got the reference line on the core outside, but it's inheriting now the outside face surface. Flip it back, it's inheriting the inside face surface. So something to be aware of there. Only works if you haven't used a wall hole slab. So I don't know what you're going to do with that information, but there it is. Let's return this to what it was. There we go. And the last one is hole surface split is curved in curved walls. I have never used this one, and again I don't see any impact on actually what it does. The help again says it's only effective if you haven't used a wall hole slab. I've tried all sorts of iterations, I don't see any impact. And finally, let's have a peek under the hood. Let's have a look at the scripts, just for curiosity's sake. I know I said no GDLs necessary, but this is just so that you can see what's going on. So this is a save as object on the left here, UDOR 1. You can see it is read-only, and the only reason it's read-only is because I've had it open for editing whilst I was saved over the top of it. If I want to make changes to this script and be able to save it, I need to close this object first and then reopen it. I'll do that now actually. Close it, open, there we go. It's available for editing. So with the save as method, you get this header comments here telling you various information and that it's written by Archicad. So if you open an object and you see this header script, you know the method by which they've created the object. We've also got some transformations here, some add, and more importantly, these moles and adds. So what that does is, remember I said that with the save as method, its orientation or its relationship to the origin is not critical. That's because of these moles that Archicad will create when you save the object. And these moles are what causes the door to update to your overall sizes, but it will squish it, it will scale it. That's what these moles are doing. So the moles, this just gets the geometry, so the origin of the door is in the center of the leaf. These scale it. This takes it from wherever it's been modeled to the center of the door opening. That's how you can get away with it not being on the origin. And remember that parameter I said about use stored environment that has no effect? Well, in the script, this is what it does. So if use stored environment, it will do all these things. Set the script type, view type, longitude, latitude, blah, 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 a bunch of different stuff that is only really relevant to camera. So it may have an impact if you're rendering the scene, but again, I haven't noticed. I've never found a use for it. Then we get into the script proper, which has got a bunch of hard-coded coordinates. So if we have a look at this, they've got a C prism. Look at all of these fixed coordinates. Revolve, an S prism. It's a pretty lengthy script for what is not that complicated door. Look at that. Nearly 2,400 lines. We look at the create from floor plan method. It doesn't have that header script because it's not created by Archicad, it was created by me, and it doesn't have these transformations. So that's why I can set these parameters, A and B parameters, and it has no impact on the script because it's all fixed coordinates. Revolve, fixed coordinates. Revolve, fixed coordinates. C prism, fixed coordinates, fixed material. Whereas on this side, it uses the parameter. And again, a very lengthy script. There's a lot of code here. If you were to script this yourself, it'd probably end up being 1/10 of the length, if that. But this is the result with using these two methods, either save as or create from floor plan. Okay, we are done. Now you know the two methods by which to save your geometry as a custom door, the save as method and the create from floor plan, along with the behaviors of each method. Now when you use either of these two methods on your project, you won't be blindsided by the way they work. See you in the next one.